Morning world, it's the 16th of October 2019, moon's in Taurus, sun's in Libra, sun is still square Pluto. It's about, 10:30, 11 o'clock in the morning UK time. So, astrological dictums, astrological statements. Classic ones, for example, there's JP Morgan. Millionaires don't use astrology, billionaires do. Dane Rudyard said that if you understand astrology, then the sky talks to you. Wise words indeed. One of my favourites is a quote from Arthur C. Clarke. I don't believe in astrology. I'm a Sagittarius and we're sceptical. Which I thought was absolutely brilliant. But I'd like to look at two particular astrological dictums that go back thousands and thousands and thousands of years. As above, so below, and the microcosm is reflected in the macrocosm, and vice versa. Let's look at the second one first of all. The macrocosm and the microcosm reflected in each other. The origins of this statement, I should know. I consider myself a student of astrological history and I should know the origin of this. I have a suspicion it comes from somewhere like Ptolemy or something like that. But without doing research, which I haven't done, I can't be sure. However, it is an old dictum that has stood the test of time. The microcosm is reflected in the macrocosm. If I were to explain that in any shape or form, it seems that for us to be able to recognise patterns of behaviour in the world or patterns of behaviour in other people, how can we know those patterns unless we first of all recognise them within ourselves? If you take that astrological dictum of the macrocosm and the microcosm to its extreme, then it suggests that every single one of us is an island and that our experiences in the outside world, in dealing with the outside world and in dealing with other people in the world around us, are purely there for our own self-education and enlightenment. But that's incredibly egotistic and it's very isolationist. But the idea of us not being able to identify or relate to situations in the outside world unless we first of all know them within ourselves. How can we call anyone else greedy, jealous, avaricious, cruel, or enlightened, positive, fun, unless we know those qualities within ourselves first of all? We all have our own inner angel and we all have our own inner psychopath. It's difficult to admit to that. When I hear stories of things that have been done to disadvantaged people over the millennia, and I could name so many examples, but no. Sometimes my blood boils and I just think, oh, for God's sake, bring back corporal punishment, or maybe the Arab way of an eye for an eye is the best. And then other times the compassionate, the empathic, that makes me feel like, well, why do people behave like this? What is it in their childhood or their upbringing that makes them behave like this? When I am truly lost for an explanation, when I really can't understand what makes people behave or relate or do things they do, it's because I genuinely don't know that capacity inside myself, whether it be for good or evil. Most of the times I can relate to what people do, although it's a horrible one because then I have to admit to my own dark side, which I'm not particularly proud of. But another way of looking at this, I suppose, comes from the Christian Bible. Let him who is without guilt cast the first stone. How can you know what anyone else is doing? How can you judge anyone else unless you first of all know it inside yourself? So the microcosm is reflected in the macrocosm. In order for us to know anything about the world or our role in the world, we first have to recognize it in the outside world or in others around us. There is relation. And this brings me to the second dictum, and perhaps the most important one: as above, so below. Now we can take this from a purely academic astrological perspective and go, yes, the patterns of the planets in the heavens relate directly to patterns of behaviour in humans. Although if you stick to that rigidly, then that cancels out free will and speaks of destiny and fate, which I personally have no dealings with. A more non-literal way of looking at as above, so below, is that the relationship we have with the heavens is equal to the relationship that we have with the planet. And indeed, on one of my comments yesterday, someone reacted to a number of people who have said that I shouldn't be talking about environmentalism and politics. I'm an astrologer and I should stick to what I do. Someone else jumped in and said that you can't talk about astrology if you can't also talk about the planet. That environmentalism is a direct link with astrology, and when you bring in the dictum as above, so below, yes, it is. When you put these two things together and you look at the bigger picture that actually lies behind the words, as above, so below, and the macrocosm is reflected in the microcosm. If you really dig deep into the esoteric meanings of this, you get the big picture. And that is that there's a hell of a lot more to what this thing we call existence actually is than meets the eye. Remember, please, we live in a three-dimensional existence, in a three-dimensional physical body, with a brain that only uses somewhere between 21 to 22% of its capacity. 3/4 of our brain is not used in a way that we can describe as rational, logical, analytical, or knowledgeable. We don't know what 3/4 of our brain is doing. It is, to us, it is dormant. We live in a very narrow, limited spectrum of existence. Someone yesterday did comment about how other denizens of planet Earth outside of our conscious perception are viewing the way we're managing the planet with horror. And that's as may be. I will do a video soon on that because it's a subject that's very passionate for me, particularly around things to do with the fair folk, fairies, and different dimensions of existence. And I do know quite a bit about this. I've experimented enough to know certain things. But everything is reflected in everything else. We are individuals. We have our own perception. But it seems as we look out the window, as we talk to each other, as we interact with the world at large, as our opinions change, so the world changes. As our attitudes change, so our individual world changes. We can create the world we want. And that sounds like hippie nonsense. But actually it's true. By going out there and smiling at people, you can create a better environment for yourself in the world around you, and people will react positively. You go out and shout and scowl at people, you will get treated in a much more worse way. So you can affect your environment. And by affecting your environment, you also send out subliminal signals into the world around you. As above, so below. Whose world is it anyway? And who is responsible for your own perception? You. It's your world. Catch you later, world. Bye.